you and I were chatting the other day, and I really wanted to get down like a summer scouting podcast for whitetails. And your experience, you live out in New York. Your experience is always there's so many parallels to mine, but so much is different. And so I thought, man, Tim would be an awesome guest. So I really want to get into the weeds on this. And you're actually heading out tomorrow to do a bunch of work in the farm, aren't you?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I try and be out there when I can during the summer. Like you now having young kids, it's a little bit of a distraction. And sometimes that means I start at 10 o'clock at night and work until 1 a.m. doing what I can and just come home and sleep. But, it's tough to do the scouting then, but there's obviously always plenty of other work to do, whether it's checking stands or putting a camera out or doing any of that. So it never lets up, that's for sure.
So what are you doing tomorrow?
Tomorrow I'm going to shoot my bow at distance for a little while, and then I'll probably just work on stands, and then I'll do a little glassing right before dark and see who's coming out where and what everybody's looking like. And I'll be trying to take some level of inventory. The difficulty here by comparison to some other stuff in the Midwest is like, a lot of these guys talk about having relationships with deer for a really long time. I don't necessarily always have that option. There's a lot of times where a deer just pops up and I don't have his sheds from the time he was 2 years old until he's 5.5 or 6.5. We don't have any of that. It's just, oh, there's this buck. We've never seen him before. We don't know what he was the year before. So again, each year I go into it trying to take an inventory, and you and I are similar in the capacity that I want to try and kill my deer early in the season. I don't bank on the rut. I want to try and kill them in the first 10 days of the season. So I try and take advantage of what's going on at that time of year. So in addition to kind of getting behind glass, I want to see not only am I getting behind glass to glass the deer, I'm checking out trees, seeing what white oaks are loaded up, what red oaks are loaded up, where we have apples, or, we have a couple of wild cherry trees. I'll see if there's anything that's producing cherries, looking at the browse and those types of things and what they're hitting that particular year. So that's kind of what I'll be working on tomorrow. Actually be my first day on the farm this year. I just haven't had time since turkey season.
So I love your answer because it's all over the place. And what so this is what, like when we're up north fishing, people will be like, oh, what are you going fishing for today? I'm like, I don't know, fish. Like,
right.
And it's the same thing in the deer world. You're like, oh, I'm going to shoot and I'm going to check some stands. I'm going to do some glassing. I'm going to check out some trees to see what kind of mast is there, hard and soft. And I'm just going to spend time in the deer woods and around the deer woods, just soaking it all up. And you mentioned, so I want to get into this before we get into the mast and some of this other stuff. You said you don't have a history. And so when you talk about like going to the farm, you're talking about a lease that you have in New York. How big is it? Just first off.
There's 2 separate farms and they're almost of equal size. And it's just between the 2 farms, it's just under 800 acres. And then I have 2 other smaller parcels that I hunt that are a little bit down the way from those. But the 2 primary farms that we hunt on are, like I said, just under 800 acres. So it's big.
Yeah, big, but not so big that the bucks are pure residents and you can babysit them for, 4 or 5 years till they're mature. And that's a good lesson there because that's a lot of land. Like the farm that I hunt in southeastern Minnesota is 640 acres. I run into the same thing. Like year to year, some of the bucks are the same bucks, but it's not so cut and dry who's going to be living there, who's going to survive. There's a lot of hunting pressure. And so if you take that and you have it, and then you have it again, and you have it again, and then all of a sudden you're down to like 80 acres or 40 acres. And we tend to take that mentality sometimes because we see this, name the bucks, set the hit list, that kind of stuff. Man, if you're hunting, if you can't do that consistently on 800 acres, what do you think the odds are you're going to do it on 40 or 80? I mean, it's just, you're talking one piece of those deer's home ranges. And so that's a good lesson there, that if you can't count on it on 800 acres, it isn't going to happen on a smaller property. So that leads me just around to what you're talking about, where you're not looking, I mean, you're looking for a kind of buck. You're looking for, a certain level of maturity or whatever, but you're just out there, checking on stuff, seeing what the state of things are, factoring in, okay, these stands are ready to go, these aren't. And then now, okay, how are these oak trees going to play in? How are those apples going to play in? And you're just building a plan to hunt certain kinds of deer, aren't you?
Yeah, generally speaking. And then, each farm has quite a few stands on it and then a handful of blinds, on each farm. And it's just a matter of some years, some of those stands are hot. Some years they're not hot at all. They're all ready, but they might not ever get touched. Or maybe they'll turn around during the late season when the pressure has gotten on and those deer are switching up their patterns, avoiding us or avoiding our neighbors and that type of thing. And we try to, and the best we can, adjust to them, or sometimes just find them, right? I mean, It gets to that point. So yeah, I'll spend a lot of time just playing the chess match again in the earlier time of the year. My two favorite seasons to hunt are the first 10 days and the last 10 days. I mean, I like everything else in between, of course, but I try and maximize my opportunities during those times, because it's food and bedding, and once I get into the rut, I'll hunt more transitional stuff. But, it depends. I never do anything one size fits all. I mean, I say that about everything, whether it's my business or hunting. My world does not operate in absolutes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, things change often.
Yeah.
And so when is the opener? You guys have a late opener out there, right?
No, they changed it probably, it was at least 5 years ago. I can't remember the exact year, but we went to October 1st. So by comparison to you, yeah, it's late, but it's kind of standard for most of the states now.
It used to be like mid-October or something, didn't it?
Yeah, around the 15th. It was the 15th, and then they changed it so it was like the second Saturday or something in October, which could have been the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. It could have been the 18th on some years. So it was never enough time. I could tell you that.
Yeah, that's way too freaking late.
Yeah.
October 1 is better. I tell you what, I really like some of those states that have like a September 1 opener. I mean, if they opened them in August, I'd go hunt out there.
Yeah, like South Carolina.
In fact, I was, in talking about scouting, I had my, you and I are talking about going to Alaska next year to fish, and I'm trying not to think about it too much because it gets me really excited. But I had an Alaska caribou trip kind of fall through. We can't find a pilot to get us out there. And so we're kind of out of luck. And so now I'm like, okay, well, I have a bunch of free time in the beginning of September where I was going to be gone, and I'm going elk hunting late this year. So I'm going down to Nebraska, I think, because they have a November 1 or a September 1 opener. And I sat down last night. I couldn't sleep, and I started marking all the ponds I could find on aerial photography. And I have like one property that I have 14 spots that are just all water holes marked for that time of year. And I was thinking about it this morning, like thinking about what we were going to talk about. I'm like, man, if I get down there and it's a cold front and it's raining, like all of this, it's gone. So I'm like, okay, tonight I got to sit down. I got to figure out this food source stuff. And that's what it's all about in this early season. Mostly, like you said, bedding, food, and I mix in water, especially if I'm hunting early September. I mean, I looked at the average monthly temperature for that part of Nebraska is going to be about 85 degrees. So I'm just, hoping the water thing will turn out. But I'm also looking at those food sources, and what sucks about it is like you're going to go glass tomorrow. What are you going to glass? You going to glass beans? Beans
and corn.
You're going to glass corn?
Well, they won't be in the corn, but unless they're bedding in the corn, but they'll come out from the timber, and just walk the edges. So that's what I see them do. I mean, sometimes they'll come out and eat on the silks too, but I'll I'll sit and I'll get up high in this one spot and I'll just glass a bunch of fields from there. And then, that's on the one farm. And then the other farm, unfortunately, I kind of have to be a little bit more mobile to see most of the fields, but
it's primarily beans.
No, it's a mix of both this year. So, and then there were a couple of fields I drove past a couple of weeks ago. There were a couple of fields that were tilled up, but nothing was planted yet. So I don't know if those fields have been, planted at this point. And that's the other thing I'm kind of scouting when I get down there tomorrow, is just trying to figure out what's in where.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. That's a trip I take every year to a couple different places just to see what's planted, what's, not only where I can hunt, but around there, especially if you look at the commodity prices lately. There's an awful lot of corn planted and not much for soybeans. Mm-hmm. And so if you can get on that, if you're looking to kill early like we are, if you can get on those beans right away, or if you have one isolated bean field, that's usually money. But like the farm that I hunt in southern Minnesota, there isn't a bean field on it this year. And so our neighbors are going to have awesome hunting, and hopefully they blow some deer over. They'll be going back and forth, but it's always nice to just try to get that gimme out of the way if you can. Sit on the edge of the beans the first night, but sometimes it doesn't happen. But the good thing about what you've got going on is at least you get to get out there and get your feet on the ground and see and start putting all of this stuff together right now in the summer. And I like that you answered when I asked you what you're going to do scouting. I don't even know if you said anything about trail cameras. Did you? No?
Maybe I touched on it, but I run very few cameras, and I don't check them pre-season. I actually pull my cards later in the season, or if I'm going into a specific spot, and I just I use that data generally for later. I don't get wrapped up in the big buck inventory game, because it just hasn't proved to be worthwhile for us. Last year, we didn't run any cameras at all. And it was because for years we were running a lot of cameras collectively between myself and my hunting partners. And we felt like we were putting too much pressure on the animals before the season or during the season, checking cameras. And we were letting them know what we were doing. And, we just kind of realized that we were getting to the point of diminishing return on utilizing those cameras. And you and I have talked about this before. I like cameras. They're great. They're an awesome tool. But at the same time, I sometimes feel as if it's taking away some element of the hunt for me. Yep. So that's another reason why I like to use them in season more, and then have that information for the next year. Of course, the opportunity that particular buck has been killed is always on the plate. But by contrast, what I've started to do is just, okay, they seem to be utilizing this corridor consistently during these days in, October, November, December, or whatever, or, they're using this particular thing on these weather patterns. I'll go back and look and see what the weather was like for those days, if it's been a long time since I've pulled a card or whatever. And when you have a piece of ground that you can consistently hunt, even if it's public, right, to just know that data and have, years and years and years of input, it gives you such a leg up when you got to go and make, a decision. And hopefully you get to the point where you start making more of the right decision, because I've sure made the wrong decision way more times than not.
Yep.
So,
well, your strategy of kind of just letting them soak, coming back to your trail cameras and seeing, all right, what really was going on in a long-term time frame. That's sort of what I've migrated to, on these traveling over the road hunts on public land. I'm not even bringing cameras most of the time, but on the stuff in Wisconsin and Minnesota where I can run them, I'm doing the same thing. It's kind of like I just push it out of my mind, push them out of my mind. And then in, January when I'm shed hunting or something, I'm like, all right, it's time to grab those and see what happened all fall, or what happened for 2 months when I was gone. And it doesn't, it's a weird thing because it kind of just, it puts you in the mindset of like recognizing some of those patterns, like you said, like, okay, they seem to like this area more in mid-October. Why? Or like, what does that really matter to me? Or what was going on for this week? And so it's not like it solves your problems, but it just gives you like a little bit closer. It's the same thing when you go sit on that, sit out and watch those fields and glass them. Watching what those bucks are doing now in the midsummer is awesome. It's fun. It can kind of clue you in, but there's a lot of daylight between here and your October 1 opener. And so it's just like it's better. It makes you a better hunter, and it gets you a little bit better understanding of what's going on and who's living out there and everything. But it's like, you're just kind of like putting all these pieces slowly together. And it's not like you're going to go sit tomorrow and see something where you're like, that's how I kill them on October 1st. I mean, that stuff's so rare. We're kind of sold that through the outdoor media. And I know it because I've written those articles a billion times. Like, but you got to just build that plan, do all that stuff. Like you're talking, build in the soft mass and the hard mass and the glassing and some of the trail camera work. And then like over time, you sort of feel like you kind of get better. Right?
Yeah, it could definitely be argued that the cell cameras are the ticket. And I think in a lot of respects they are. I had bought a bunch of cell cameras years ago and I used them a little bit, but I got sort of frustrated with signal fallout and, and the paying for the packages and whatever else. I'm looking at that Cuddy Link system.
Yeah.
And maybe using that through their mesh network. That looks pretty cool. I was actually talking with them this morning about, just some of the attributes of it to try and understand. Cause I like the fact that everything works back to a main camera. Yep. You just have to go check the one and your impact can be a lot lower, whether you ride in with a truck or use an e-bike or something like that. And, just keep it simple because we actually have a couple of primo spots that are right on the access road. So it's easy to go in and out. And that's where I would throw up that particular, camera that collects all the information. And then obviously that system has the opportunity to be cellular too.
Yeah. So let's clarify this. So what Tim's talking about here is this new Cuddy Link. It's from Cuddy Back. It's Cuddy Link system. And it has like a home camera, and then you can hook up or you can link, I think like 15 cameras to it or something. It's a lot. 16 maybe?
16 total cameras on it.
Yeah. And so all of these cameras communicate with one another without a plan. You don't need a data plan or anything. So you have this home camera, you can put out 1 camera, 2, 3, 4, up to 16, and they form, if they're within a certain distance of one another, they will communicate and send pictures back to that home camera. So even though you might pepper the woods with these cameras, they're only sending images back to, you only have to check one. Mm-hmm. And even that camera you can set up for a cellular package. So that could even send all the pictures from 16 cameras back if you wanted it. But I haven't used them yet either, but I think it's a freaking fantastic idea for some stuff and definitely probably a game changer as far as the new kind of technology, because it's just it's a cool idea and it would allow you to be real low impact.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's what I like most about it is the fact that you're just not spurring in and out to go check those cameras all the time. I love doing it, man. I love looking at pictures of deer, but that's what I found. That was the only time I was seeing them because I was telling them, hey, I'm here. Look, what's up?
Yep. So. Well, it's interesting that I feel the same way. Like when I go in and check a camera, there's almost always this lag time afterwards where the deer aren't coming around. And I know you've seen this. You hang a camera on a tree and you think, oh, this is this little camouflage box. They're not going to pay attention to it. And every freaking deer that goes by is aware of that thing. And it's just, it's a good lesson. So if you walk in a rainstorm, you've done everything right for your scent control. You put that little camera up on a tree, wipe it down so there shouldn't be any scent on it, or however you want to go about that. Then you leave. It doesn't matter. They still see it. They still know it's there. They used to hear them. That's changed now. And so you think, well, now you walk in there and of course they're going to know you're there. Like, like they just do. That's their home. And so the less time you spend going in and the more time you spend sitting back and watching and staying out of their world, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's what's nice about operating on private land. If you can get away with, limited intrusion. Public land's a different story. I mean, you never know who the hell's going in there, and there's always people going in there. So it's just the thing to live in. But if you have the situation where you can get away with it, of course, it's a good idea. So Tim, you're looking at. I get asked about like soft mast and hard mast a lot and how it factors into my decision. Every year it's like, oh, are the acorns dropping? Who's hunting acorns? Oh, the deer aren't on the fields anymore. And there's so much going on out there. So when you're looking at the oaks, when you're glassing them or you're seeing them, like I was running the other day and we had a storm come through and I could already see that the acorns had hit the road, from the wind coming through. All of that stuff's going to factor in, but like how much are you building that into your plan?
Well, kind of back to the crop thing, it depends upon the crop rotation. So, and it's not because I'm hunting the crops. Like as an example, I use corn more as a cover crop early in the season than I will food. I anticipate the deer to come out of the corn and go to some other form of mast. So I'm looking for, like most people, I'm looking for stuff that's in the white oak family early on. Now, generally speaking, because we have that October 1st opener, I might not catch when those things drop. They might be vacuumed up before I even have an opportunity to hunt over them. But with that being said, I'll try and, again, put my time behind the glass and find where those desirable reds are and then follow those red oaks. But frankly, early in the season, I really am looking at more apple trees and pears, because we got a couple of pear trees on the farm. Mm-hmm. And same thing. If I have an apple tree or a pear tree that is in close proximity, I'm talking really close proximity, 100 yards or less to that corn. Like I want to have a setup that gets me onto that. And, if there's alfalfa around or something like that, because we do have one alfalfa field, I'll sort of work that if the wind is doing all the right things or if we have rain coming in, I'll go and I'll hunt those green fields. But generally speaking, I'm looking for that one or two hard mast trees or those one or two just piled up soft mast trees. And then, if there's decent mushrooms in transitional areas, I'll even, hit those up, especially if there's good browse in close proximity. That's usually my morning setups and that type of thing. And then, the others are my afternoon setups. But again, I factor in a lot of weather conditions too to my decision-making process.